Unresolved Mysteries. The Missing Man in the Catacombs of Paris. Ever since the release of 1999's Blair Witch Project, the concept of the found footage movie has been a staple of the horror genre since then. However, the following case is a real-life example of found footage. For those who do not know, the catacombs are a series of underground tunnels that are located underneath Paris. The catacombs were created during the late 18th century to help alleviate the city's cemetery shortage crisis. There are approximately 6 million bodies buried in the catacombs alone. In recent times, however, the catacombs have become a popular place for urban explorers. The people who tour the catacombs are known as cataphiles. One significant example of a cataphile is a man shot some footage of the catacombs of Paris sometime in the early 1990s. The footage, which was shot on a black and white video recorder, itself starts as rather unremarkable with the man exploring around the catacombs. He even picks up a few bones along the way. As the video goes on, however, the man begins to walk at a faster pace. He eventually begins to run. In a state of panic, he finally drops the camera before running off into the darkness. Sometime after that, the footage was found by a group of cataphiles. A documentarian by the name of Francis Friedland eventually acquired the video. He later presented the footage on the second episode of the ABC Family, which is now Freeform, show, Scariest Places on Earth. Some URL, in 2000. This video is not without its skeptics, however. Some people believe that the footage was a hoax that was concocted by either ABC Family or Friedland. After all, the episode was aired about a year after the release of the Blair Witch Project. Just like the Blair Witch example, it is highly suspect that the footage was shown on a television show instead of being handed over to the proper authorities. However, there is an argument in favor of the footage being real. Nobody has stepped up after the initial airing of the episode nearly 2 decades ago, including Friedland himself. I highly doubt that he is making any money from this since he kept a low profile if his IMDb, some URL, page is any indication. He did appear on a 2014 episode of Ghost Adventures, some URL, that revolved around the catacombs of Paris. However, Friedland had confirmed that the man in the video is still missing to this very day. Assuming that the found footage is real, the central question of this post is, what happened to the man? Researching this particular post has been a challenge in and of itself. The footage itself does have a Wikipedia page, so I have to rely on a few scarce sources, which I take with a grain of salt. While a lot of the sources mentioned above have suggested paranormal connections to the video, I believe there is a more likely explanation that is grounded in reality. The tunnels that make up the catacombs are between 150 to 200 miles long. It is relatively easy to get lost in said catacombs. For example, 2 teenagers, some URL, had to be rescued from the catacombs after being stranded for 3 days. Since the average temperature within the catacombs is a cool 60 degrees Fahrenheit, it's safe to assume that the man managed to get disoriented before succumbing to hypothermia. So, what do you guys think? I would love to hear your feedback. Sources: some URL, some URL, some URL, some URL. It's a terrifying video if real. Not sure whether it is or not. Always spooked me seeing that video. Can totally see someone getting lost in those catacombs though, probably fake. There is no body, there is no missing person connected to the catacombs. Just a video shown for first time in some sketchy paranormal TV show. And that's the only evidence. If Friedland was convinced that it is a real deal, he would rather hand it over to French police to investigate instead of showing it in a TV show. So, by him saying that the guy in the footage is still missing, that implies that we know who it is, right? How else would he know he's still missing? Sorry to lock on to a relatively minor detail in a well-written and interesting post, but is 60°F really hypothermia temperature? It's a little less than ideally comfortable, but I know folks here in Texas who maintain their house thermostat at 60-65°F. There is a similar urban legend set in Odessa, Ukraine. Some URL. This is 100% fake. Nobody is missing from the Paris catacombs. People being lost and found, yes, but someone missing since the late 90s? No. No one ever. If this is real, I really want to know the identity of the missing man then, because literally no one is searching for him except Ghost Adventures. The amount of people saying the catacombs are for tourists and I went and it's literally impossible to get lost etc. You went to the part open to the public. Of course if you're going into the tourist part with a line and tickets, even without a guide like every other tourist, it's safe and yes there's a bunch of tunnels labeled as close to the public. Where this video is supposedly from is a completely different part of the catacombs that is not where you were. This person did not buy a ticket, follow the only path and get lost. They went in an illegal, closed-off, entrance into a part that is not set up for the public and has many linked tunnels, dead ends and all looks relatively similar aka easy to get lost. Whether or not the footage is real, I don't know, but if people could stop saying it's not real based on the fact that they have personally been there and didn't get lost, that'd be great. With the cataphiles roaming around, the ERIC police force, and the people who go to the catacombs to party, someone would have found the body by now. Is this the legend that the movie As Above So Below is based on? This case is intriguing. However, after all these years, I think the footage is fake. I believe that by now someone would have found the man's body and the mystery would have been solved, so I'm erring on fake. My best friend was hired as an actor for Scariest Places when they shot in our city. She was paired with another girl who was not an actor and told it was real but my friend was in on the whole thing. They used old school effects to create an atmosphere, dry ice for fog, real ice under the tent to make it cold, crew members creating noises and stuff. Scariest Places rigs all their scares, which makes sense. Because the only other option is what I had to suffer through when I was hired to host a ghost hunting pilot and the director refused to stage any scares because it had to be real. We ended up with 6 hours of footage with nothing remotely scary happening. If you have a real ghost hunting show you have to deliver on the ghosts. Which is what Scariest Places did when my friend worked for them and more than likely did with this video. I love Scariest Places but I can't watch my friend's episode because I've seen her genuinely scares and it's not the same as her acting scares for the camera. It makes me giggle when I watch. On A+ side she occasionally gets residual checks when the channel decides to run the episode. I'm really curious to see the answers on this post. I have also wondered if that video is real or staged. It's really terrifying to think about it being real. I could believe it if there were no details given. Something like, this was found in the catacombs. We hope this person didn't get lost down there permanently. What a terrifying thought. But the fact that they claim to know that the man is missing to this day, implying that they know who it is? That makes me scream fake. Or, real video with a made-up backstory. Because if there really was a missing man, we would probably know who it is. There would at least be theories going around the internet about which missing man from that time this could potentially be. So wait, people think that the Blair Witch movie was real and they just didn't turn in the footage to the cops? They do know this was a student film made by film majors at the University of Central Florida, right? I've heard about this. Can't watch the vid at the moment. Does the catacombs look real? If fake, is it still filmed there? Most likely explanation is this dude just scared himself. It's easy to do when in these kind of places I'd bet. Then just ran till he found an exit, and never admitted to being the one leaving the tape. There's another urban legend about the catacombs. A story about urbexers finding some room with a couch and a TV deep in the tunnels. Looked like someone was having a secret mini theater down there. The only reason anyone would think this is real is because they want it to be real. It's so obviously fake that I'm genuinely surprised it's on here. Why would you go alone? Why would you not carry a flashlight with you? Has it been confirmed that in the direction he ran there wasn't an exit? Someone made a comment on the YouTube video that others went down there and followed his exact course but turned around when they got to the place he dropped the camera for their safety. Has anyone looked further for his body? Could drones fly through there? It would probably help, with Can One Get Lost in Catacomba, to mention that originally the Catacomba were just the mines. I had an impression that original post presented it as an ossuary. Only a very small portion of the mines are used as ossuary. Just a small detail, but I believe it's easy to imagine that one can indeed get lost in the abandoned mines of about 300 kilometers long. Not saying it confirms the footage is real. I think the video is both real and a hoax. My, completely opinion-based, theory is that the person who ran and left the recorder did so on purpose as a hoax for someone to find. The comments here are kind of shocking for this sub honestly. Even if it is a total hoax, is it really too far-fetched to believe an unknown man went missing in the 90s? Unknown bodies are found all the time, That's a big part of why this sub exists, no? And not to mention, if this is real, if a tourist in Paris decided to go on a little adventure, he probably wouldn't be telling many people he's about to go do something pretty damn illegal. Paris is a tourist spot, doesn't mean he was from the area at all. Has anyone ever found the actual video? The only one I have ever seen is the one featured on the TV show, and that edit is the only one I have ever found. What to believe these days? Too many hoaxes. Reports of aliens, Sasquatch etc. being fractured into a million pieces of disinformation, hoax and disheartening nonsense. This footage is most likely fake. How do you die of hypothermia at 60 degrees? Interesting article about electricity wired, phone lines installed in a makeshift cinema in place. Some URL, in the catacombs. Although this story smells like found footage, I do believe it could happen. 200 miles is a long way. It's possible is real enough and the individual did manage to escape, then for whatever reason hasn't claimed ownership of the footage. Fear of getting into trouble, liking that it became a mystery, simply not being aware of it, etc. People have gotten lost, yes, though they are usually rescued when they didn't manage to escape on their own. With many miles of catacombs being mostly unexplored, it's possible that someone dies after becoming disoriented and isn't found right away. The cooler, somewhat damp air would possibly impede any decay smell reaching other areas where someone may notice it. To me it seems as though it could have happened, especially if there were less patrols and such in the 90s, but not likely. Question: I know Paris has had some flooding issues in recent years, has that affected the catacombs in any way? I remember that, always found it super eerie. But it did make me want to see the catacombs outside of the official tourist areas. Didn't manage to find a local guide to hire when I went there, lol. Did they ever remark if there were one or more exits from the catacombs in the direction of where the man ran? Whenever I've seen a show highlighting this footage they always sensationalize by talking about him being deep in the catacombs, as though he ran off in an unexplored direction. I don't have anything to add, but the term cataphile sounds like the pedo term for cat-related things. Hypothermia from 60 degrees? I think that's a bit warm for that. Very creepy footage, though. I definitely think Friedland was trolling. So many things are off about the story. John Lorden did a YouTube video about it. John brings up a lot of good points, like Friedland has an entry on IMDb with very little work, which makes me think he was trying to become known. Supposedly Friedland and co were lost in the catacombs and they were all freaked out because if their lights went off they were done for. The whole time they're burning up all their lighting at once, rather than turn off the camera, burn only one light at a time, etc. In the hundreds of miles of catacombs they happened to find the spot where the guy went missing. Granted that info could have been passed on. He never mentions checking any missing persons records or anything about the missing dude. Why would no one be looking for a missing person? Personally I feel like it's a hoax. Link to Lorden Arts. Some URL. I have never thought the video is real. The behavior of the person doesn't make sense to me, unless you're trying to tell a story of how a camera is found without its owner nearby. If I can engage in a little profiling, a person who would even go into that place and explore is probably not going to be a panicker. They are adventurous. They aren't easily frightened or they wouldn't be there. So the behavior just doesn't make sense. Also, just dropping and running is a flight response. There isn't a flight type of threat. People just don't drop everything and run unless there is a direct emergent threat. A tornado, explosion, guy with a weapon, wayward race car tire, etc. Not a worry that I might not find my way out of here. It just seems much more likely that this is a viral thing, purposely created to increase interest in catacomb tours. Inspiration to danger seekers to come and seek them out. I bet there is a thriving tourist industry around the catacombs and that they use the danger of getting lost and dying as a selling point. I might be wrong, but something seems unrealistic. I remember seeing it on that TV show. It is honestly one of the scariest pieces of spooky footage I have ever seen. For the sake of that man I truly hope it's fake. I swear I read somewhere proving that this was false. I'll try and find it. I'm pretty sure that video is a fake. I spent a year in Paris and was in the catacombs nearly every weekend. I was lucky enough to make quick friends with some cataphiles, people who go down there for fun. While there are morons who'll go down there without maps, it's generally pretty difficult to be there and not run into someone after a while. There is a pretty big community of cataphiles who are regularly down there. Love this stuff. Sorry if inappropriate. As Above So Below is a great horror movie about the catacombs, especially at this time of year. Is the man missing, or so they just not have an ID in him? I think that's a place to start. Also, in his interview, Freeland said he won't go down there again. He seems pretty legit and you can see he is scared about it. The footage is most likely fake, but damn if it isn't chilling. As for folks saying that visiting the unmapped portions of the catacombs is no different than a visit to Disneyland. Sure, if you're an experienced cataphile. But for the love of God, if you aren't, don't go down there alone, because seriously, that's just asking for trouble. Literally anything can happen to someone unprepared. Maybe nobody's died in there since the 19th century, but you know what, there's always a first time for everything. I think the catacombs are kinda oversold and a tad of a tourist trap, figuratively and literally. Many people go there, a lot of them get lost. The footage actually feels more like the guy just found an exit and was so, understandably, relieved he just dropped the camera and went to his freedom. Greater than the catacombs were created during the late 18th century to help alleviate the city's cemetery shortage crisis. This is completely false. The tunnels were made to quarry limestone for the above buildings. Then, in 1786, the government decided to use the tunnels for burying, as a way to combat disease. The tunnels are 186 miles, 300 kilometers, and there are known cases of people going missing there, as mentioned in the video. I think, when judging whether a video like this could be a hoax or not, it's barking up the wrong tree to consider how much money the proposed hoaxer has made, or might stand to make. Firstly, it's a plain truth that just because a thing didn't end up making a lot of money doesn't mean that couldn't have been the motivation behind it. Hoaxes can simply fail to be lucrative despite their perpetrators' best efforts. But more than that, I think some fail to really appreciate the draw of attention or notoriety all by itself. In 2000, the concept of the viral video did not really exist yet as such, but there are still extremely famous videos out there that have had people talking for years, even decades after they got the right kind of exposure. The video we're talking about now is legendary, I don't think anybody can deny that. As for whether it's a hoax, I tend to lean in the direction. I'm pretty sure I was one of the people who saw the original broadcast, and I was captivated by this video and its imagery, mysterious and intriguing graffiti, pits of unknown depth filled with human bones, a person running off forever into Stygian darkness. It was incredibly anxiety-inducing to watch. But unfortunately the video's shine has kind of dimmed over time. The impression that I've gathered is that all of the mysterious points of interest revealed in the video are actually in fairly well-explored and well-traveled segments of the catacombs, and are quite familiar to enthusiasts. Any cataphile who watched the video would probably instantly know precisely where the unknown cameraman was at all times throughout it, robbing it of much of its sense of mystery and panic of the unknown. To me suggests that the video was made primarily with an audience unfamiliar with the catacombs in mind, which probably describes much of the original program's audience. I know this video was certainly my own first introduction to the existence of the catacombs. And the somewhat disappointing fact that the man at the end of the video is actually running off into charted territory and not some unplumbed gulf of mystery suggests that if he panicked himself to death in the darkness he would absolutely have been found not too long after his camera was. I guess it's possible he spooked himself and began to run for a way out. But dropping the camera? That's a very theatrical move if you ask me. I think this man, or the freelance photographer himself, made the video. It doesn't play out like something genuine, in my opinion. Some URL. Photos might be a more reputable source. Some URL. The fact that the person who found the video is a video editor and producer kinda ruins it for me. The catacombs have always been more crowded than people would normally think. If this isn't fake, I think it is. He may have run into the wrong person. How have the catacombs not been completely mapped by drones by now is my question. I honestly don't know what to believe. The timing makes me think it's a hoax made to generate cash, but at the same time no one has stepped up claiming they're the one, and the vid itself is very convincing. Honestly, common sense says it's 100% fake. First of all, who was this guy? Surely any documentarian worth their salt would dig up information and find out who this guy was and what his background is. Not to mention why he was in the catacombs in the first place. But none of that information ever surfaced. While there have been fake, lame attempts at people trying to claim they knew him, etc., no one has ever really came forward, with a shred of proof, and said that's my son/brother/father/friend. And frankly, the chances of that not happening if it was in fact real are very slim. Someone, somewhere would have come forward, reported him missing, said they knew him, etc. But again, never happened. Why? Because it's most definitely fake. I like a good found footage video as much as the next person, but this just doesn't add up. Pieces are missing and it would have all been figured out by now, 20-something years later, had this been real. I think the saddest thing is that his body will most likely be forever confused with the millions of others. The man most likely experienced such a great deal of panic that he took off from his paranoia. I hope we can at least find some of his belongings. I have to lean towards the hoax side. The timing and going to a TV show rather than the police yells artsy. I wrote an X in the Catacombs. I actually went to the Catacombs a few weeks ago. I guess I'm a cataphile now. But that's so weird, they had a lot of gates and blocked off areas. Is that because of this man or just because it's a tourist attraction? The police, especially in the early 90s, probably didn't care if someone went missing down there, maybe if it was national news or they were pressured to, but even then it's a foreign country. And some police in some foreign countries are pretty terrible at their jobs. No offense. Just because it was not given to the police doesn't mean it isn't real. You never know, maybe they did review the footage for only a small amount of time and didn't find enough credible evidence to start an investigation.